The extent to which people at the bottom rung of our society are shoplifting is so eclipsed by the amount of bad the top rungs of our society are doing to the rest of us. Shoplifting. This is about shoplifting. So if you're not following More Perfect Union, you need to fix that. You need to be following More Perfect Union. They're always putting out some really good stuff.
Absolutely. Some of the best labor reporting happening in the country. Absolutely.
And the deal with that is they had a thread last week, a couple of days ago, as I'm reading this, that from their Twitter page here, last year Walgreens repeatedly sounded the alarm about shoplifting, but today, which was the 5th of January, a Walgreens executive admitted that they might have, quote, cried too much last year, unquote, about theft. What he didn't acknowledge, however, is that Walgreens is losing money because of billions of dollars in fines, not robbery. Let's remember that last July, More Perfect Union points out, one single viral video about shoplifting at Walgreens got millions of views, was covered in over 300 articles nationwide, and that bolstered the perception that shoplifting at Walgreens was hurting the company's bottom line. And this is about one incident. You know, I mean, we've all saw last summer, there was just an insane amount of coverage about, oh, shoplifting this, shoplifting that. Shoplifting is so bad. An article
Yeah,
after
you would have
article.
national media talking about like a very localized shoplifting incident,
Yes.
and it getting tons of traction. It just,
Right.
yeah, blown far out of proportion.
But the coverage about other, and this is the whole thing, right? That working people or people at the bottom rung of society, our quote unquote criminal behavior, our behavior that is antisocial is criminalized, and you know, and not, you know, not necessarily unrightfully so. I mean, you know, it's not. It would not be great for society if everybody just shoplifted everything, okay? You know, I think we all acknowledge that. But the extent to which people at the bottom rung of our society are shoplifting is so eclipsed by the amount of bad that the people at the top rungs of our society are doing to the rest of us, and yet the coverage of these things is totally inversed. So one of the things that they pointed out is today, which was 2 days ago, January 5, Walgreens posted its first quarter earnings, and they would have generated over $1 billion with a B in profit if not for a massive $5.2 billion settlement related to opioid litigation. So had they not been a key player in the widespread killing and destruction of lives of people across the country due to opioid addiction, they would have made $1 billion in profit last year. And yet, how many people knew that? How many people that are listening to me knew that Walgreens settled? I didn't know this before this thread came out. How many people knew that Walgreens did a $5.2 billion settlement related to opioid litigation? Not many of you. And yet, how many of you were aware of this bizarre media creation about shoplifting? All of you. Every single person that is listening to me is aware of the bizarre media creation around shoplifting in the last year. And yet, if you take, I think, what was the actual numbers on shoplifting, the almost certainly inflated numbers, what was it, like 300 million or something? $300 million of property was shoplifted in the last year, I think, is something I've seen numbers about it, and the numbers are meant to make us believe this is a ridiculous problem. And yet, in this one company had a $5.2 billion settlement related to just the opioid litigation. We're not talking about their wage theft, which Walgreens also got hit with a wage theft lawsuit in 2020, where the company ultimately had to pay out $4.5 million in 1 year to a combined 2,600 workers. So again, this is one company, 2 lawsuits, wage theft and opioid litigation, billions of dollars. And yet this is not the narratives. Why is there not article after article after article just profiling all of the people whose lives Walgreens has destroyed? But there is article after article after article about, some local guy took too much Benadryl from the local Walgreens or CVS, right? That's the kind of thing that you got to think about when you're thinking about the news that you're reading. Why is it that I'm reading this? Why is it that I'm reading this instead of the other thing? On top of that, in 2019, Walgreens also faced $269 million in fines for scamming Medicare.
Right in line with the conversation we were just having with Ed in terms of fraud involving Medicare, and here's Walgreens. Really, I mean, talking about the shoplifting being a hysteric thing that came up over the past year or two, I'm looking, and now they have actually admitted that shoplifting went down in the last quarter. So, I mean, it's interesting that here it is, probably a year or so after this really blew up in the news. Maybe a year and a half. It was sometime in 2021, I think, because it was like San Francisco, I think, was one of the main places they talked about. But yeah, it was definitely a hysteric news drive all around shoplifting and supposed shoplifting rings that were popping up, and how much money they were supposedly losing to this. But to your point, how much money is lost to wage theft every year? How much money is lost by working people because they are underpaid, they are not paid their overtime as they are supposed to be paid, they are cheated hours, they are cheated breaks. Like, come on. We know the extent to which wage theft is such a huge problem in this country that certainly doesn't get anywhere near the kind of coverage that, people stealing laundry detergent from Walgreens is getting. And again, like you said, it's not to condone people stealing from Walgreens by any means, but it's just a matter of power dynamics, really. You've got executives at Walgreens making ginormous amounts of money with their salaries, their dividends, their bonuses, knowing that their business model is hurting people, whether that's through the opioid addiction or through other methods. I was telling you off the air earlier that, I used to go to Walgreens for my prescription medications, and I cannot go there anymore because of how many times they personally did harm to me. It's a minor compared to the type of harm we're talking about, but it's just, suck it up, Walgreens.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear, and it's a shame so many media outlets kind of ran with that sensational coverage and provided them that coverage, which to me offset the punishments that they were paying and made it easier for them to spin a story.
Absolutely. And the idea that, and it's important to understand where the media is coming from, what's being reported, what isn't being reported. And, that's such an elementary thing about media literacy that so many people don't know. Like, I was talking to, so I had a conversation about a week and a half ago with Scott Buttram from the Trustville Tribune, who's the publisher and the owner of that paper in Trustville. And I mentioned that to him. He's a conservative, but he really tries to pride himself about, I don't want, whenever we're doing reporting, opinion's different, but whenever we're doing reporting, I don't want people to know whether or not the reporter is a conservative or a liberal or whatever, and he says he gets compliments from liberals about his reporting, that they're reporting that they don't know whatever, and I don't doubt that, and I don't doubt that maybe even he has, I don't know the guy really well, but maybe he even has these lofty ideals. But I told him, that the reporting on the story is a political act. You can choose to report on this story and report all of the facts and all of even the relevant facts about this story, but this choice to report on that story as opposed to this one is a political act. And it was like, he had never thought about that before. And he was like, that's something I'm going to take away from this conversation, Jacob. That's a really, and I'm like, what do you mean? You're like 60 years old. What? And you're the owner of a newspaper. How have you not thought about this before? That's crazy. That's bizarre.
But, hey, I give you credit for having that conversation and talking about that. And frankly, he's not alone and not really having that insight, I would say. And that's something that we talk about a lot on the show, is our frustrations with the media and also the way people can be shaped by the media. Yeah. It's, I just can't get over it sometimes, how quickly the media can change people's minds. Mm-hmm. You're right. It's what they cover. It's what they don't cover. It's how they cover. It's who they talk to.
Yeah.
It's what gets prioritized. It's how things are framed, even like the way things are laid out on a website, the way the headlines are written. Because we all know about the clickbait headlines that don't really match the story, and there's just so many different ways in which media can be biased or is biased. And the truth is, we all have our own biases, and no matter how hard you try to be a neutral, objective reporter, you are still a person who belongs to society.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's over the holidays, they didn't update their site. And so for 5 days, the top 2 stories was this mugshot of a guy who was arrested for murder, and this other announcement from the area Chamber of Commerce. So for 5 days, you go to their website, and the first 2 things you see is scary man arrested for murder, and look at what the bosses are doing, right? That's political. But he seems like a lot of conservatives. He seems like a nice guy interpersonally, and he did tell me, if there's ever any story you think we should cover, or if you want to write anything for us, let us know. We cover here's the cities: Trussville, Clay, Pinson, Centerpoint, Argo, Springville, Leeds, Moody, and Irondale. So if y'all have any labor stories there, I have ostensibly been given an invitation to cover stuff for them. So let me know.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.